as I mentioned, the interconnectedness of the universe through quantum entanglement, once connected particles remain in instantaneous communication. So, proving the underlying unity of the field. So, the body, mind, and the world are expressions of a single vibrating quantum field. Everything is energy in motion, interconnected. And what we perceive as objects or as self are waveforms collapsed into perceived reality through observation and consciousness. And so, what does this mean on a metaphysical level? And so, in metaphysical language, separateness is the fall from unity into illusion, which has been referred through Buddhism as the Maya or ego identity. And the ego is a construct of the mind, filters reality through duality, self versus other, subject versus object, good versus bad, which this isn't a moral failure, but it's a perceptual distortion, a trance of forgetting the true self. And so, how does this relate to human suffering? So, most suffering arises from the belief of I am separate, I am alone, unworthy, isolated, unloved, invisible, and fear being the ultimate trigger of these beliefs. So, manifestations of this illusion of this great Maya is seeking love and validation externally, addiction, so numbing substances, addiction to stimulation, external attention, superficial intimacy in sexual form, feelings of emptiness, invisibility, or not being enough, over-identification with roles, labels, appearances, and beliefs, the compulsion to control, compete, or compare. Manipulation's a really big one, depression, and even resistance. And in both metaphysics and quantum models, consciousness is not in the body. It gives rise to the body and the world. What we call matter is condensed energy, and what we call self is a modulation of one infinite consciousness. So you are not a body with awareness. You are not awareness appearing as a body. You are a spiritual being having a human experience via a very intelligent avatar. So unity consciousness isn't a spiritual or a universal truth. It is a baseline, the natural state obscured by conditioning. It is the recognition that I am, and beyond the I am is we are. And I would even say beyond the we are, when we allow everything to merge, it just becomes am. So it is the return to wholeness, to source, experiencing itself through infinite forms of creation. And what I'm speaking of is not theory or philosophy. For me personally, it is a rememberings that occurred during an NDE when I was about 6 years old, and in numerous reality shifting events afterwards when the illusion of separateness cracked open. And these experiences are not extraordinary. They are deeply natural. They are the remembrance of what already is. My experiences are not solely mine. They are ripples of a remembering that is actually happening across the collective. They are not mine alone, but are actually ours. And I am meant to share them with you to help you remember. So as I share, I invite you to fill into your own memory, not of events, but of essence. So the place in you that has always known, I am not alone, I am not separate, but I am we. As I mentioned, when I was about 6 years old, I entered into a drowning, and this was a near-death experience. In this particular space, I was underwater in a lake. And after the fear of death and the primal behavior of fighting to live, to survive, subsided, I entered a state where I surrendered to the transition. I became okay with the transition. I didn't feel the need to resist or really fight against it. And in this drowning process, I was moving between a POV of being under the water and from a POV of being above the water. And being above the water allowed me to view what was happening, to view my mother frantically searching for me. I could even feel her nervous system becoming extremely activated, moving into fight or flight, moving into fear because she couldn't find me. What came out of this was that as I surrendered, I moved into a space of oneness. And I began to fall in love with my surrounding, with even the process of dying. And I began to settle in and felt bliss and joy at the beauty of watching the particles of sand being kicked from off the floor of this lake and dancing and making its way to the surface where the sun was breaking the crust of this amber hued water and hitting the pieces of sand and creating these beautiful fragments of light that were just cascading through the water. And at 6 years old, I remember feeling bliss and love, and everything around me was moving in slow motion as if everything was happening underwater, which essentially it was. And it was in this space that telepathically I was asked what I wanted to do. And I responded telepathically that my mother wouldn't know how to handle this, that it would destroy her. And so I had made the conscious decision to stay. And upon that conscious decision, instantaneously, I watched a woman make her way towards me. And I watched the ends of her long, beautiful braid that went down the back of her hair moving through the water. And I watched her body shift and almost cascade towards me, where she lifted me out of the water. And this lake was very small. It was a man-made lake that was buoyed off, and the parking lot was very small. So everyone knew who was parking. A lot of people were double parked, and there's only one plot of earth, plot of land, shoreline that you can sit upon. So as we looked for this woman to thank her as we were starting to depart, we could not find the woman. No one knew of the woman. No one saw the woman. No one even saw the event of a little girl drowning. Not the lifeguard, not any other families, and no one said that they had to move their car to let another family out. So this began an experience of feeling a connection to something much larger than myself. And this unity consciousness, this oneness, this understanding, this merging with everything around me, this remembering, would occur numerous times throughout my life. It would happen predominantly in nature, where I was surrounded by our natural space of being. In nature, we are merging with the consciousness that surrounds us. This consciousness is not just in moving through human form, it's all around us. And nature was a space that I would start to flex this muscle and start to participate in merging in that which was around me. And I would get glimpses of that bliss and that love. And I would get glimpses of that I am meant to be here. There's something greater than myself. And these little tremors became larger and larger. One occurring in a New York subway, where I was reading a book and had a shift. And I would refer to these as these experiences of oneness as pivots or shifts. I didn't have a name for them at the time. I didn't understand them at the time. And I always refer to them as a pivot or a shift. And it usually came with letting go of a belief or dislodging something energetically that felt like weight. And in this particular event, moving between boroughs in the subway system, I looked up after having this conscious shift, and everyone in the car was looking at me, and light was pouring from inside of them. And I was surrounded by a bunch of smiling New Yorkers. Now, if you spend any time in New York, you would recognize that's not a very common thing to be surrounded by very smiling, unactivated, calm New Yorkers. And it was a brief moment, it was seconds of seeing this light pouring from inside out. People were highly illuminated, and I sat in this feeling of bliss and love. And it was even larger than the one felt in the NDE. I chalked it up to the book. I thought, this is a really good book. I should probably tell everyone about this book. I didn't recognize that this was happening internally within me. And we moved to the largest one that just recently occurred a few summers ago. And again, I was navigating in a threshold between countries this time. And I was sitting in a car navigating between Canada and the US, and traffic was moving very slowly. So I pulled out my book and read my gene keys as I was inching forward every 4 to 5 minutes. And an event occurred where I found myself judging my neighbor in a nearby car. And I caught myself criticizing them, judging them, putting them in a label, in a box, based off the music that they were listening to. And I went back to reading the gene keys, and I had this subtle shift. And I heard a voice that actually, outside of myself, and this has happened quite a few times in my life, this voice outside of me said, Lelanea, do not judge them. They are you. And I caught myself panning over and looking inside the car and spending time looking and observing these individuals. And I started thinking, man, I bet these are really nice people. They look really calm and beautiful. I bet I would really like hanging out with them. And within seconds, this shift that occurred became so palatable and so textured that it changed my perception of time and space. The trees, the leaves that were blowing in the trees around me started to slow down and move in a wave-like motion that would occur underwater. I started observing two young boys playing football, and I began to merge with them and actually start feeling their emotions. I was feeling the excitement of running in this open field and throwing this football back and forth with the sun shining and the wind blowing and the giggles and the play and the excitement. And I could feel every ounce of it. And it shot me back to this experience of when I was a child playing football. And as I observed these boys, I thought, this is incredible. How the hell am I feeling them? I'm feeling them, and time and space is shifting, and people's movements are shifting. And now light is pouring out of every individual. Now light is coming out of their eyes. And I'm seeing this light shift, and it's moving between trees, and it's moving between the grass, and it's moving from families, and it's moving back to me. And I recognize this as consciousness. And as this experience progresses, it enhances and it builds. And I began, for the first time in all of these experiences to happen, to actually start hearing information that was being provided to me. And I had an innate sense that if I repeat what I'm hearing, then there's a greater chance that I'll actually remember it when this experience is over. I recognized I was way deep in an incredible experience. And what I didn't realize until I came out of the experience is that I was sobbing from how much love and bliss I was feeling. I have never felt, I've done many psychedelics to experience God, source, universe, myself, and none of them have ever provided a feeling like this. This was coming from source. This is coming from inside. This can't be manipulated externally. And I'm sobbing and smiling from ear to ear. I'm sure I look like a lunatic. And people were passing by my car and I could feel them. I could hear their stories. I could feel their emotions. And as the information started pouring through me, I started hearing myself speak out loud. I was hearing a message that through emotions, we all can experience the individual avatars. Each one of us, we're all the same person. I am you, you are me. We decided when we incarnated to be different individuals, to have different experiences, so that these experiences are relayed back to source. And in the human experience, through empathy and through the connection of emotions, I can actually witness and experience your experience, the parts of it that really matter the most. And this is the information that we relay back to source. And in this shift of consciousness, I had a remembering. So I compare it to observing someone with amnesia or someone with Alzheimer's, and how they go into a space of forgetfulness where they don't even recognize family members. They feel like these family members are familiar. They see photos of them all over the wall, and you can start to convince them, yeah, this is your brother. This is your son. This is your partner. And they go, yeah, that makes sense. I do see photos of them everywhere. And they'll start to go along with it. But then there will be a moment where the amnesia of forgetfulness drops. And all of a sudden, it's a full bodied experience of, oh my God, I remember you are my son. You are my husband. And then they have a full bodied emotional remembering. And this is where I entered. I entered into a full bodied emotional remembering that I am source. And I was observing source, remembering that it was source. So not only am I sending information back to source, as we all are, but I actually remembered that I was source and who I was. And the tears flowed and the love poured out of me. And I continued to just feel the resonance of everyone and everything around me, watching this bead of silver energy moving between myself and everyone, and the illumination of all that around me. And as quickly as I said the last word of the last message that was given to me out loud, like a balloon, all of it started to deflate. And now all of a sudden, the trees started, the speed of the movement of the breeze and how they responded to the breeze started to pick up. The kids that were over to my right were now over to my left, who I had witnessed and was participating with them again. Now, all of a sudden, the ball that they threw moved much faster through space time, and their speed of movement rapidly picked up. And I could feel everything that I was seeing around me, the illumination started to become a little bit more dulled. But the love and the bliss was still in me, but I could still feel it starting to deflate. And I knew that I was coming out of the experience. And so these are my personal rememberings with unity consciousness. And what I recognize is that once was perceived metaphysical, spiritual, and even for some people who are not on this, that this doesn't resonate with, they may even perceive it as woo-woo. But what we're learning is that through our conscious evolution and our shifting, so is our perception of science, what we're able to perceive. And this science is backing up this information. And I am not the only person who's having these experiences, these visions. Other people also are having these rememberings, which are backing up the findings in quantum physics and backing up centuries old information coming from great sages and the great rishis. And we're in a great remembering. And through this process, I'm here to share my experiences. I do hope more are to come, but I am here to share these experiences and even the behaviors or the tactics or the third density human behaviors that I've started to adopt to help me remain in conjunction with my learnings, with these rememberings.